You're listening to Inside Israel Today with Gil Hoffman on the Land of Israel Network.
Hello and welcome to Inside Israel Today here on the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com. Amid all the excitement that's going on for Israel here in Jerusalem, across the ocean in Washington, and around the world, that it is a big news day when a meeting between the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of the United States is not even close to the biggest news. In the past, that would always be such a big deal, especially when there were the fights between Obama and Netanyahu. Here you had Netanyahu and Trump meet for the fifth time since the campaign. Very impressive. 5 times. Netanyahu has met with Trump more than any other world leader has, I believe, and that shows the closeness of the relationship. We saw how Donald Trump talked about how the relationship between Israel and America has never been better, and then immediately Netanyahu talked about how the relationship has never been better. They agreed. It's so nice to see an Israeli prime minister and an American president agree. And then after they, exchanged their superlatives and everything, with Netanyahu comparing Donald Trump to Cyrus the Great that allowed the Jews to rebuild a temple, and Balfour, who allowed there to be a mass influx of Jews returning to their homeland, with the world recognizing Israel, the land of Israel, as the homeland for the Jewish people, and allowing a state eventually because of that declaration to be built here. Then Netanyahu and Trump were even nice to the media. The press secretary of the president told the journalists who were there in the room with him, with Netanyahu and Trump, enough. They've made their statements. It's time for you to go. And Donna Weiss of Israeli Channel 2 said 1 minute and started asking questions. And Trump didn't only take one question. He took question after question after question. All the headlines that you're seeing that came from this event came from the question-answer part, not from the superlatives that they issued at the beginning. She asked him, are you going to be coming to Israel for the opening of the American embassy that we highlighted on our show last week when we were there on location? She didn't mention Inside Israel Today, but I am. And Trump first said, I may come. I'd like to come. I'll try to come. I like Israel again, he said. So even though he didn't really give a headline, like my tweet was breaking ? Trump announces that he, quote, may come to Israel for the opening of the embassy. So it was kind of an anticlimax, but he was being honest. He was telling the truth. I don't have the slightest idea if I'm coming yet. It's way too soon for me to know where I'm going to be in May. And, from the American standpoint, that might sound odd or whatever, because Americans like planning things well in advance. From the Israeli standpoint, it sounds like totally cool and normal. We don't plan things more than 4 days in advance either. Good. You don't know yet? We don't know yet. All right. If anything, what was much more strange for Israelis to hear was the speech of Nikki Haley overnight at Israel time at the AIPAC Policy Conference, where she said much more clear that she would be coming to Israel. But that's in May. How do you already know? We're very impressed by that. Wow, you can plan that far in advance, but it's March. That's in May. And so, but it wasn't a final yes either. And so, with all due respect, at least from the public aspects of Netanyahu's meeting with Trump, there wasn't really a headline, and that's okay. We like it when they don't fight. There's always a headline when they fight. They don't have to fight. And we hope that there were plenty of what could potentially be headlines if we knew about them, but we don't have to know about them, behind closed doors as they were working on the serious issues like Iran and how to stop its nuclearization with a deadline coming ahead that the Trump administration set for that. And perhaps finalizing details on Trump's Middle East peace plan. That it's very nice that he's talking to Netanyahu about it before. Let's not forget, Barack Obama announced a peace plan the day before Netanyahu was set to arrive in Washington. So that is definitely a very serious improvement. And yet, so because there was no headline immediately, with all due respect, there were other issues that really overshadowed the meeting between Netanyahu and Trump yesterday, as hard as that is to believe. Over the last few years, when I needed quotes about Netanyahu, there have always been people that are referred to in Hebrew as mekoravei, as people close to. And in English, we usually translate that as the associates of the Prime Minister. And these associates have come and gone. You know, it's not an easy job working in the Prime Minister's office. It's not an easy job working with Netanyahu in particular, who's not the most easygoing kind of fella. And his wife gets involved, and she is certainly not an easygoing kind of person, according to everyone who's had any experiences with her. And there was one guy, though, who kept on coming back, who seemed to just really see the Netanyahus as personal friends, as someone who really, really liked them, enjoyed their company, Sarah included. And so no matter what would happen with the comings and goings in the office of Netanyahu, he would tend to always be there. His name is Nir Hefetz. And yesterday, Nir Hefetz became a state's witness against Prime Minister Netanyahu, Sarah Netanyahu, and even their prized eldest son, Yair. That is a very big deal, ladies and gentlemen. Nir Hefetz was the guy who did all the dirty work for them. Nir Hefetz was their messenger to do things that embarrassed them, that they didn't want to do publicly. And he knows about everything that they have done. And it's just really shocking to hear him speaking against the Netanyahus. Because the last time I spoke to Nir Hefetz at length ahead of a speaking tour, this is what he had to say about them. Netanyahu is an expert internationally on terror and the economy. He is sought after by the world. There is no political threat for him on the horizon, in the Likud or in the country. The investigations are just being advanced by the Hebrew press. He totally downplayed them. He said that Donald Trump learned from Netanyahu to avoid the pressure of the media by using social media, which is an interesting point. He talked to me about what Netanyahu was going through, about how he's bothered daily with questions on these irrelevant investigations when he's supposed to be dealing with serious things. That he goes to the security cabinet and he gets prevented from working because he gets a little note from an aide telling him that his lawyers are on the phone, or that there was some kind of leak from the police to the nightly news on TV, and he has to go and talk to his lawyers about those leaks and how to respond to them. He's told me that this happens almost every week, which is a very, very big deal. He told me that it also works the opposite. You know, when he was being questioned by police, he got a call from the President of the United States. And he had to tell the police, I've got the President of the United States on the phone. Can I take this call? Now, I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen. When you've been stopped for speeding and you're kind of in a hurry, can you tell the police, excuse me, police, I know these laws are really important to you, but I'm in a hurry and I've got the President of the United States on the phone? I wish that would work for me, ladies and gentlemen, and Netanyahu used it, and apparently it worked. The funny part was, he said, can I briefly take this call? As if he doesn't know who the President of the United States is. Donald Trump doesn't do briefly. He's not a briefly kind of guy. So Nir Hefetz told me, even if all of what they're reporting about the investigations is correct, It's still no big deal. So Netanyahu accepted cigars, gifts for his wife. Big deal. He downplayed the amount of money. He downplayed what the millionaires could have received in return, and said, is this a reason to replace such a popular and successful prime minister? He mocked the police for going so far in their investigations but still not coming up with any serious evidence. He said they've had 150 witnesses and they're bothering people all day. Netanyahu can't accept gifts or even a book, while Donald Trump has accepted bathrobes from the Saudis made out of the fur of a cheetah. You know, I've used that line in pretty much every lecture since Nir Hefetz told it to me, because that's pretty amazing. You know, cheetahs are pretty hard to catch. They're really fast animals. And the Saudis caught a couple cheetahs, I guess, to make bathrobes. I'm sure that costs a pretty penny. Netanyahu can't accept a book, Nir Hefetz pointed out. And then he defended Sarah Netanyahu. He said, Sarah, we had all these different investigations against her, and in the end, the police recommended an indictment only on ordering meals from a caterer, despite her having a chef when there are important events happening. And even that, he downplayed the amount of money that cost. He said there were 70 witnesses and 16,500 documents, and that's all they could come up with against her. He totally mocked these charges in a way that really impressed me and really helped my speaking tours. And now he is a witness against Netanyahu and Sarah. A state's witness means that he's supposed to spill the beans. It really is a betrayal of the suspects. Why did he do this? The police convinced him to turn state's witness with a couple of methods. Number one, they said, why are you defending Netanyahu? He's toast. He's going to jail anyway. We've got so much dirt on him. You're defending a political corpse. How is this going to help your career anyway? Save your own behind. And if you hear that over and over again, and they give enough evidence that they actually do have evidence, then that's the kind of thing that makes you spill the beans. But even more than that, they played dirtier. They kept on making fun of Netanyahu about how Netanyahu could have had questioning earlier, that the only reason why Nir Hefetz was still in prison was that he needed to be in prison while Netanyahu's questioning happened so they could prevent colluding. And he said the police said to him, there's no reason for you to be in prison for so long. It's Netanyahu. He's delaying and delaying and delaying his questioning. All the bugs that are biting you in that prison, how uncomfortable it is, it's only because of Netanyahu. He obviously doesn't care about you. And they went even further. And they took the testimony of at least Sarah Netanyahu, possibly the Prime Minister as well, from Friday, and played tapes to Nir Hefetz of when Sarah was saying incriminating things about him. And that's the kind of thing that, okay, that's the last straw. She's doing that to me, I'm doing that to him. The same thing happened with Shula Zaken, with Olmert. Shula Zaken was Olmert's loyal secretary for more than 20 years. She considered him a father. And when she found out that Olmert incriminated her, she became state's witness. She had already served prison time for him. Not just like little arrests temporarily, being held for a reason, like what happened with Hefetz. She served months in prison to defend Olmert and didn't spill the beans against him until they proved to her, he's incriminating you. And then she finally cracked. Nir Hefetz cracked much quicker. And it's absolutely amazing that the ultimate defender of Sarah Netanyahu is now turned against her. And against Yair Netanyahu, the prized eldest son, who for a long time people were joking that he would be the next prime minister taking over from his father in another 20 years. It works in different places in the Middle East. It could work here. It's little Yair has gotten in trouble lately, gone into strip clubs, got into really unnecessary fights on social media, and while walking his dog, may she rest in peace. And yesterday it came out that Nir Hefetz is accusing the Prime Minister of listening to bad advice from Yair Netanyahu that endangered Israel's security. We don't know what specifically. It might have been related to the metal detectors that were controversially placed in the entrance to the mosques on the Temple Mount. It might have been referring to an incident involving Israel welcoming Netanyahu, in particular welcoming with open arms, literally hugging the security guard at the embassy in Amman, who killed people apparently in self-defense, but still it looked really bad in Amman. These were decisions that were apparently later regretted, where Netanyahu listened to Yair Netanyahu over security authorities, over the heads of security agencies in Israel. Yair Netanyahu, with all due respect, is not a military hero like his father and like his uncle. Yair Netanyahu served in the spokesman's unit of the IDF, and you know what? So did I. And it's hard work, and they do great work, but we're not heroes. It's different than going on Sabina plane and rescuing hijackers like his father did. It's different than going to Entebbe like Yair Netanyahu, like Yoni Netanyahu, Yair Netanyahu's uncle, did, and was a hero over there, killed in action. And so if Nir Hefetz spilled the beans against Yair Netanyahu, that could lead to him getting in trouble too. There are police recommendations to indict Sarah and the Prime Minister. So far, nothing against Yair. He's going to be questioned soon in the investigations as well. And so the news with Netanyahu is definitely heating up, and after the break we're going to be talking about how the politics is also heating up. Stay with us.
Who are we as a people? Who are we as a nation? What does it mean to be a Jew in the land of Israel, as a Jew in Judea? What is our message to the world? We're finally back in our land, and we get to ask these questions.
Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to make Judea and Samaria an issue for the entire world, to know that the Jews have a place in the world.
Israel Inspired with Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.
And we're back here on Inside Israel Today on the Land of Israel Network, on thelandofisrael.com. Just to stress, before I get into the politics, Netanyahu is innocent until proven guilty, and while these are dramatic developments, there have been state's witnesses before. And we don't know if those state's witnesses gave information that ended up really incriminating the Prime Minister. The police have made their recommendations that Netanyahu is guilty of bribery, but it's all in the hands of the Attorney General, and he can decide that all the different cases against Netanyahu, he is innocent as a newborn baby, clean and white as snow. And as people who care about the future of Israel, we have to pray for that. We have to pray that our Prime Minister really is innocent and really didn't do anything wrong. We don't want to be a corrupt country. We don't want to have a corrupt Prime Minister. We want it all to be proven false. We want Israel to be the light into the nations that the prophets said we would be. So I'm not an investigator. I'm not a policeman. I don't know if he's guilty or innocent. I hope he's innocent. And sure, even the biggest critics of Netanyahu also hope he's innocent. That being said, we might be going to elections whether he's guilty or innocent, and whether it's good for Netanyahu or bad for Netanyahu to go to elections. Strange irony that after talking for months about whether we'll end up going to elections because one of the coalition partners would force him down because of the police recommendations to indict him, and then they didn't, we might go to elections anyway for something as run-of-the-mill as a fight over conscripting ultra-Orthodox students into the army that's been going on for 20 years. I remember when I was first starting out at the Jerusalem Post, I covered the recommendations of the Tal report, written by Supreme Court Justice Tal, who gave a formula for drafting yeshiva students that really resulted in a lot of yeshiva students being able to evade army service. And the Supreme Court eventually ruled that unconstitutional, even though it was written by a former justice of the Supreme Court, as well as a very brilliant team of lawyers, including a very high-paid, very impressive lawyer at the time named Isaac Herzog, was on that committee, and now he is, of course, the leader of our opposition to Netanyahu. And so way back when, they were still dealing with that, and here we are still today. This could bring Netanyahu's government down? And the answer is yes, if they're not willing to compromise. It's kind of ridiculous, because the deadline that the Supreme Court gave to resolve this issue, to pass some kind of bill that would change the current situation, is September. But the ultra-Orthodox politicians are saying, no, you have to fix that by the 15th of March, by the time that the Knesset goes on recess. Already now. But wait a second, we were supposed to pass the budget by then. They're saying we won't vote on the budget if you don't pass that first. And the finance minister says, wait a second, the goal of our government is to pass the budget. I'm not voting on anything else until we pass that budget. And if we don't pass the budget, which is, everything our government has put everything into, and all our accomplishments, then there's no point in me staying finance minister. I'm going to quit, and then there won't be an election. There won't be a government. There'll be an election. And so as long as the ultra-Orthodox and the finance minister are saying exact opposite things and not coming down from the tree, then we're going to initiate an election next week. We could already start a 3-month process of electing new people in every party. Half of the Knesset members won't come back, all because of a proposal on conscription of ultra-Orthodox soldiers that's due in September, and a state budget for 2019. That's due on the 31st of March of 2019. We haven't even hit the 31st of March of 2018. By law in Israel, if you don't pass the budget by the end of March for the coming year, your government falls apart. Well, we already passed the budget for 2018 a long time ago, but we could unravel that whole thing now if we want, and still have time to fix it. And so they're working on compromises behind the scenes. Naftali Bennett, in particular, wants to prevent the election from happening, or at least make it look like he worked to prevent the election from happening. He's called it a fake crisis. And I hope he succeeds. Elections are a pretty intense and busy time for me. But after he reported that he convinced the ultra-Orthodox to slightly come down from the tree, Litzman, the main ultra-Orthodox Knesset member who was unwilling to compromise, said, no, I have not compromised in any kind of way. Netanyahu himself, in a briefing for reporters after his meeting in Washington with Donald Trump, said, I don't want elections. I did try to fix this crisis before I left. I will try to fix it when I come back. But so far, no, my coalition partners are not compromising in any way, and it doesn't really look like they will. It's not too late. I don't think it's going to happen this week when Netanyahu's in Washington, but next week, there are all kinds of tools at their disposal. They can delay deadlines. They can delay the Supreme Court's deadline. They can ask the Supreme Court to say, September's too soon. We need more time. And it's totally legitimate for the Supreme Court to give more time. They've done it before. They could ask the finance minister, how about we extend the Knesset session for another week? And then we pass just the first reading of what the ultra-Orthodox want, along with the final readings of the budget, pass it into law the same day. How about that? That can still work, and that can still prevent elections. And then they go off to their holiday recesses for Passover. They're already out on March 15th for Passover. They're out 3 weeks in advance. 2 weeks? They're out 2 weeks in advance for Passover. that gives them plenty of time to clean their kitchens. Then they've got their time to celebrate with their families and avoid eating any leavened bread. And then they've got time to put all their Passover dishes back in their boidems and clean up. And they're still not going back. And they still have Yom Ha'atzmaut, our 70th birthday of Israel, of independence, to celebrate. And before that, of course, Yom HaZikaron, our Memorial Day for our fallen soldiers. They still need time after that to recover. They're only coming back at the beginning of May. And then, of course, the focus will be preparing for more celebrations, especially if Donald Trump changes his may come to a really will come, and is here to cut the ribbon on that pre-existing building that we reported from on Inside Israel Today last week. So that ceremony could be happening with Netanyahu as prime minister and sitting pretty and no political problems, or it could be happening in the middle of an election. That would be very intense. It could very well be that those criminal investigations will be the focus of the dirtiest election ever. An election that would be fought over political cleanliness could end up being anything but clean. And because that could happen, and because the police could get involved and leak various things, if I'm Netanyahu, I do everything possible in the next 10 days to appease everyone. Find a way. Tell them to get over it. These are not legitimate arguments. They're ridiculous. The people of Israel don't understand, and they're right not to understand why you would go to an election about not meeting artificial deadlines when the real deadlines are so far away. Netanyahu needs to stop this from his own political good, especially if he's really guilty. He needs to be staying in power as long as he can right now. The next elections aren't even set for until November of 2019. Why have elections in June instead? That would happen if elections are initiated in March. That is another 17 months that he could have in power, plus the time that it takes to form a new government afterward, another couple months. Who gives up 19 months in power? And legally, the investigations wouldn't bring him down during that time, possibly because the Attorney General needs time to go through all the evidence, and there's always new evidence. Now, with Nir Hefetz and others joining this investigation, it's going to take even longer than anyone expected for the Attorney General to make a decision. And then there's the reports that the Attorney General is not even going to decide on any of the investigations until he's done on all of them. That could make it be that he won't be done until the elections would take place on time in November of 2019. So it's always fun in Israeli politics. And when you've got this much going on in Israeli politics and this much going on in criminal investigations, even a meeting between the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of the United States becomes, big deal. They've met a few times before. He praised him. They've done that before too. It's not really front page news. Amazing what happens here inside Israel today. Thank you for being with us on our show. Stay tuned to all the excitement that happened as it happens here on the Land of Israel Network, on thelandofisrael.com, and also, of course, at the Jerusalem Post. Thank you, and shalom from Jerusalem.